So the astrology of the week of 12 July 2021 through 18 July 2021 is really a continuation of these themes of home life and play and fun and love and family. As we extend here into the final weeks before Jupiter comes back into Aquarius, these are sort of these final weeks here. We get a Mercury-Jupiter trine this week, but it's these final moments to kind of hold our loved ones, enjoy the summer, get out into the world, have some play. And I'm excited about it. Let's get into these charts and get into the week here. I just want to say what I'm doing in these videos will be, and what this video is going to be, many of you know this already, but I'm going to first break down the planetary aspects this week between non-moon traditional planets. Then I will go through the signs that the moon enters and leaves, so the lunar sign changes. Then I'm going to take a look in chronological order, some of the more important charts that I find relevant to discuss. And then finally we'll do a cartomancy or a tarot reading to finish off this talk and this preview and this kind of deep dive into the weekly astrology. So I'm glad you're here. Welcome. My name's S.J. Anderson. I'm an astrologer, writer, and I look forward to going into this. Actually, it's a really cool moment. I think it's one that's been building. I've been talking about this in the last few videos, that I have a strong feeling, a strong sensation that, you know, Jupiter coming back into Aquarius, and it's not just me, it's a chorus of astrologers out there, is going to bring a return to these themes from the beginning of 2021, these Aquarian themes, when Saturn and Jupiter met in Aquarius in December 2020, and then we had about 5 months of them together there, ending in mid-May 2021. And so on a personal note, the second half of this year will be about returning to some of those themes and the matters that we had to personally deal with as it relates to Jupiter and Saturn conjoining. Maybe the Aquarius sector of your nativity can give you an indication of some of those themes, but also what's happened. That's the good thing about astrology. We get evidence of what happens in our lives, the facts that unfold in our lives that can inform us about what our nativity is trying to communicate and what the transits mean. And so we have already 5 months this year to look back as evidence. You know, get your journal out, just think, you know, what was I dealing with? And I think we get a return to that. But on a collective level, you know, this is very much, I think, on a collective level about the big crisis we've been dealing with and the shutdowns of society and the, you know, the crisis is really all I want to say. And just a brief note here, you know, on Twitter, someone was asking me about getting political and getting really deep and kind of taking a political stance on things. You know, there's a time and place for that. In these videos, I just don't really want to forefront that because I don't find it to be conducive to helping kind of individuals and maximizing the number of people I can reach. You know, if this was like a political astrology channel or a political channel, it's one, very controversial. You know, I could potentially be risking my channel if I said the wrong things. And I mean, I don't even know what the wrong things would be to say. But it's just not an area that I want to forefront. I prefer to kind of allude to and speak very generally about political, and particularly really anything political is controversial because someone may disagree. I mean, someone is going to disagree. Half the people out there may disagree if I were to say something or take some kind of strong stance. And frankly, I don't really have, you know, I try to wear my beliefs about reality very loosely because I'm just one guy. I mean, and I'm not an expert. I'm not out there involved in the political landscape, studying it day in and day out. So I try to focus the way I live more spiritually and in a spiritual life that can then kind of apply to really any kind of political framework. You know, and that's what I really want to do in the videos, because there's ways into astrological symbols where we can interpret them so that we maximize their applicability to all people. No matter what, you know, cause someone is taking up, if someone's speaking controversial things or someone is, whatever they're doing, I'm trying to have max applicability. So I just wanted to say that at the outset. You know, on this point though, it can be controversial because when we start talking about the political choices that society's making right now, there's all kinds of debates and people feel strongly. So I want to avoid going into that. But just to say there will be a return to probably some of those themes, and it seems quite likely that, you know, the Aquarian energy ruled by Saturn, which is the sense of isolation and entrapment, fits quite well with the turn that society took starting in March 2020 when Saturn first came into Aquarius. We've been living in a more, let's just say, locked in society and more digitized society with how we communicate. I don't think that's controversial. I mean, that's a point that is a matter of fact. So I think we could be returning to some of that. And so be prepared for it. Be prepared to have restrictions in place. And we're seeing it already in the Southern Hemisphere where they're in winter now, very much a restricted turn there in recent weeks. And I think when winter flips into the northern hemisphere, we'll get similar restrictions. So just be prepared for it. It's matching the astrology is why I'm bringing it up here. Jupiter coming back into Aquarius at the end of this month. And so I'm coming now to the theme. The point I was trying to make was that that's kind of an overarching theme right now. These last 2 weeks before Jupiter does return to Aquarius are a time for fun and play and enjoyment and maybe getting out, especially in the northern hemisphere. And the astrology is a perfect reflection of that. We had that auspicious new moon last week in Cancer, and it's a 2-week energetic projection of that energy. That energy will last until the next syzygy. And this week right here to start out on Monday, 9 p.m. where I am, Mercury and Jupiter perfect a trine. Mercury has now come into Cancer, not at the time of the recording of this video. It will happen very soon here on late Sunday where I am. But right when Mercury enters Cancer, it assumes that trine relationship to Jupiter and Pisces and then perfects that trine here, like I said, 9:45 Monday evening where I am. And this brings that Mercury dynamic of play, of, think about like puzzles. Kids play puzzles. That's all Mercury. You get the pieces and you try to look and analyze and see where they fit. There's all other kinds of board games have a very mercurial tone. But it's the significations of Mercury as fun and as of childhood. And really, Mercury in Cancer is perfect for that because you're with that home and the family and the parents, and you're doing the play that families do to connect with each other and relate to each other. I love Mercury in Cancer. It's one of my favorite placements, actually. But it's this, so we get this trine with Jupiter, and Jupiter's earlier in zodiacal order, sending its power. One of the last aspects, I think the last aspect, Jupiter will make with Mercury while Jupiter's still in Pisces. So it just expands a sense of hopeful play and of just nurture and the fun that can come with family and the truth that's in the love that we share with our family, at its best. I've had problematic family relationships in my history. I still do. No relationships, not all relationships are perfect. Some are strained, but the ones that aren't strained, there's a real special thing with me. I have a brother and a dad still from my nuclear family left, and we always used to go to baseball games in the summer. We would just go in Texas. There's 2 teams, and that's what we did to kind of celebrate each other, and a very male thing. We weren't sitting opening up necessarily deeply, but we just have fun going to watch the game. And it's just one example of the kind of things family can do together that's fun, that expresses that love and that shared time together. I think Jupiter here just sweetens the pot even more so. It's the gifts of love, the gifts of family that Jupiter can imply with its symbol. It's really something to be very grateful for. So you might think about who you're loving and who you can be with in terms of family. I say family because that's Cancer. Cancer is very much that sign of family, ruled by the moon, the mother energy, or the grandmother, and these kind of. I come from a matriarchal family on my mom's side. So anyhow, let me come back here to the slide. We get that, so I've talked about the new moon, how it's just 2 weeks of this wonderful Cancerian energy. Now we get Mercury there, the trine from Jupiter, talking about our home, closeness, securing our loves, those we're dear and near to. So that's all what I've already discussed here. And then the next day, so this will be on Tuesday, 3:30 in Central Europe, Venus and Mars join in this passionate mix where these 2 planets of physical connection meet in fiery Leo. I'm reading off my slide here. But Mars and Venus, the planets of love and physical love, the 2 planets that mainly signify that. When they meet in the sky, it's really a combustive, kind of opportunity to express that love and, with passionate physical connection. And of course, if it's a romantic relationship, this could imply, sexual activity. If it is a friendship or a family relationship, this can just imply, maybe robust running together or cooking together. That's a very tactile Venusian thing where you can sort of cut. That's Mars. Maybe you'll cook with your loved ones. I certainly think it's just sharing time and feeling passion with each other and with other people that we're sharing here. Now, the one thing about this is it will be opposing Saturn, so I think there's a sense of separation. Saturn is separation. Saturn strong in Aquarius, opposing this conjunction by sign. It's about 10 degrees or 12 degrees when it perfects here. And I think that maybe there's a sense of things not being as accessible as they would be if Saturn wasn't there. I mean, maybe I saw this movie, The Sheltering Sky, a Paul Bowles novel that was adapted by Bertolucci, the filmmaker, I think early 90s. And there's a scene when the couple, they go out into the desert and then they begin trying to make love and they just fumble it. And it turns out there was some deeper issues in their relationship that asserted themselves in that moment, and then they stopped that activity and sort of had to get real. And this is the kind of thing that Saturn in opposition can do. It's like the false intensity, or that intensity that comes in a larger context of maybe more serious matters. Those serious matters may force themselves to be considered amongst the fun and amongst the play. So just be aware of that. There's this very serious and cool and kind of mature Saturn containing these fiery personal planets. I mean, that has a lot of, some modern astrologers have a technical meaning for personal planets. I'm not even sure what that signifies. I mean just planets of relational activity and physical joining of Mars and Venus. Those two planets are encased in a more serious kind of framework with this Saturn opposition. So look out for that energy to be part of that here on Tuesday, 3:30 Central Europe. Okay, now let's shift. Let's go to the moon's sign changes. Again, we have another week. This is the third in a row where the moon starts the week in a T-square by sign with Saturn and Mars. So there's this rougher edge to the beginning and endings of the week. The weekends are not as, so Saturday here at 8 p.m., this coming Saturday on the 17th, the moon enters Scorpio and then formulates that T-square. So Saturday night and then all day Sunday, we're dealing with these dynamic moon aspects with Mars and Saturn, which are not the most fun. They can be, where events sort of tumble over and then reality gets exposed and sometimes difficult arrangements. So we're getting that again on the weekends. It's right now as I sit here with a moon in Leo as I'm recording this, conjoining Mars by sign, Mars and Venus, and opposing Saturn. So it's in this energy that I'm now encased in as I record. We return to that on the weekend. But before that, there's this amazing Virgo moon. I've had this on my radar for a long time because the moon will be waxing in Virgo and it'll be mutually received by Mercury in Cancer. So it's this wonderful mutual reception where Mercury and the moon team up and support each other, where we get Virgoan energy combining very well with Cancer and all of the good things that those two planets can do together in this sextile relationship while the moon is waxing, so we can increase things or start things that want to grow. And it's some of the best waxing energy we've seen, definitely since eclipse season has ended. But the Libra moon follows, so that is on Tuesday. We get the Virgo moon beginning at 10:30 a.m. Then on Thursday, the 15th, we have the Libra moon. During that whole Libra moon transit, the moon is received by Venus and Leo in that day sextile. And that's nice. And then the moon will be received by Mars in Leo when it enters Scorpio. So there's this Venus-Mars co-presence in Leo does cast its shadow over the moon this week, and really over the whole week then, because the moon is that sphere closest to us. Whatever the moon is experiencing, those energies come right down to us. So I think this is, even though the Venus Mars conjunction perfects on Tuesday, it's overseeing those two planets being close by degree the rest of the week and really into the next few weeks. It's overseeing through rulership the moon's transits starting on the 15th. And that's another reason why this Virgo moon, and we're going to get into the chart, so I'll save this, but the Virgo moon does have an aversion to Leo. So it escapes that Mars-Saturn opposition, and that Virgo moon sextile to Mercury and Cancer, those are averse totally to those malefics. And that's why I've been really looking forward to this energy. It's a protected, safe, waxing moon, mutually received by its ruler. So let's now shift. I'm going to go through, I think, 4 charts this week in chronological order, and let's just check a few of these out. I'll try to move pretty fast. I don't want to get too bogged down, but the first one is this Tuesday moment here. 10:37 where I am here in Central Europe. It's my transit of the week, and this is again what I just was speaking about, this lovely Virgo moon mutually received by Cancer. So the moment you might want to look for is that as soon as the moon enters Virgo, it applies to an opposition with Jupiter, and it's applying closely to Jupiter. So where I am, I can get that while the ascendant is also in Virgo. That could be a fairly interesting election. I like that this mutual reception is quite supportive. And if you check out here, like I was saying, all planets are averse to the Leo-Aquarius axis, except the planets that are in that axis. So it's really, really fabulous. You get that water trine with Mercury and Jupiter, you get the Sun in Cancer, and then you get this opposition and sextile relationship that Jupiter brings in Pisces to Cancer and to Virgo respectively. So it's really a wonderful energy. It's a way out, you might say, a way to leave the Venus-Mars opposition to Saturn and Aquarius. You can kind of leave that to do its own thing, but then separate out these whole other parts of life. And one way to maybe delineate it, I'm thinking about what I talked about at the beginning of this talk, which is, lingering in the background of our world right now is this kind of rising specter of what's going to happen when fall and winter get here in terms of respiratory illness. What will happen when that gets kicked up, and a lot of us, I think there's a lot of uncertainty out there. And so I wouldn't embrace the uncertainty on the one hand, but keep your feet on the ground and keep your mind aware that there's quite a bit of uncertainty coming into this next few seasons. And then Jupiter comes back into Aquarius, retrograding back into Aquarius. It's really a kind of tense and uncertain time. And that's expressed in this chart by Venus and Mars opposing Saturn. But for this moment, for this 2 weeks, for this final post-eclipse, post-Mercury retrograde period where Jupiter is in Pisces, we get these planets now averse and not making any aspect to that difficult Mars and Saturn. So it's sort of like I said at the beginning, a time for play and ease and enjoyment. Some of the last few transits where we're open for that before I think things could roughen up here a bit. So let me come back here to this. Think here about Mercury-Moon combinations, talking about home, buying home items, Mercury buying, the Cancer energy being home, doing astrology in the home with maybe your mother, if you have a connection to a mother or a mother figure that's into astrology. Maybe you'll work on astrology with them. Nice family time. The sun is co-present there with Mercury. That can be a father energetic, sextiling the moon as a mother, so a metaphorical sort of father-mother energy. You might just even think about that as a balancing of energies in a home environment such that it's very stable. This to me really indicates, I wouldn't say screams, that's I don't think an appropriate word for this transit. It's highly indicative of stability and comfort here, and that's why I think that with the sextile between the sun and moon is a big reason why that's indicative of comfort. But then you have Mercury ruling the sun and mutually received by the moon. It's even more grounded in comfortable energy. And then again, Jupiter doing its thing. So I love how Jupiter gets to play a role here in the final weeks before it has to return to Aquarius. and deal with Saturn and confront Saturn for that one last time, the rest of 2021, before it goes into Pisces for good. So, I have here, I think that's it. I think this is really the transit. You might want to just look for other points later in the transit where the moon will be applying to the sun, and maybe that would be a nice sextile, more direct solar lunar energy. Okay, and then I have here business activity related to nurturing and home life. Maybe you're selling home products or goods for the home. That's maybe another way to lean into this mutual reception, or buying things for the home. Okay, so that was the first transit. Next transit comes this same day. While the moon here is still in Virgo, 3:32, we have the perfection. I've already spoken about this some, but the perfection of Mars and Venus in the 20th degree of Leo. This is the big day. This is the big day. I have here the dance of love requires lead and follow, initiation and consent. And when those energies are flowing, there's a sort of combustion in the best of ways. And I've thought about my own relationship life. Someone plays the role of the initiator. Someone has to say, I want you, will you do this with me? The first initial kind of expression of want and desire, and kind of the offer of an invitation, or the attempt to pull someone in. And the person that is the object of that initiation then has a choice to kind of receive it and accept it and let themselves kind of be drawn into another person's energy. And it's not like it's always the same initiator and the same initiatee. This is a dance of relationship of this, and it's a constant flow of how we dance. Dancing, there's a leader and a follower, and sometimes that will switch even on the dance floor. But when one person lets themselves be led and one person takes on that leading role, it really can have sparks flying. So this is, I think, maybe the best in terms of Mars and Saturn, Venus and Venus and Mars joining. That's kind of the best expression of it. It's that balanced leading and following, two people completely joined and letting that flow of life unfold. Now again, Saturn is opposing here, and it means that expression may not be able to capture its fullness. There's some kind of limitation in play here still. So this is actually 8 degrees, roughly, just over 8 degrees of the opposition. Now it's a separating opposition, but it's still sign-based, and it's still somewhat close there. So I think Saturn is important here. Saturn plays a very important role. I have here that we want things that we can't have, and maybe we're initiating with someone and they're not as, maybe they join us, but maybe not fully. Maybe there's something that comes in the way here. I have not quite there in quotes. Whatever that there is for you, that moment of satisfaction doesn't quite arrive. So it's okay, life is like that. So we work, things don't quite meet the expectation, and we just get back up and keep working. When these planets meet again, let's say the sextile, that will happen later in the year. Saturn may not be involved, and you want to check that out quickly? Yeah, let's just check that out. This is the thing about my, like I said, I love doing the videos this way because I just pull up the transits in my solar fire, and we can check it out when that sextile is. I don't have that exactly memorized, but we can just push through here. We'll let this thing animate. So here it is. We're getting towards a sextile here as Venus gets into Capricorn, and Mars is, there it is. There's the perfection of that sextile. So this happens in November when these planets make another aspect. Now Saturn will rule Venus at that time, and this is the sign that Venus is going to retrograde in starting in mid-December. So Saturn plays a role here, and then Saturn makes that that square to Mars. So Saturn is still involved, maybe for a while with this dance, but I guarantee you there is times when Saturn is not involved. And even in this chart, Saturn does rule Venus, but it's averse, and Mars has the upper hand over Saturn, Mars being very strong in Scorpio. So I think even this chart, there's a better flow here between these two planets of connection and physicality and love. And so my point is, if we just now go back to the slide, is just that Saturn isn't always playing such an oppositional role. It's just in this chart, this is how the expression exists. There's times when you have a Venus Mars conjunction when Saturn isn't even aspecting it or ruling it in any way. So, okay, so let's just move on here. That Saturnian energy, that Saturnine flavor. And just to make another delineation here, you know, I think Saturn in Aquarius and Saturn in Capricorn has been a huge part of the world changing. What I spoke about at the beginning of the talk in terms of maybe the political side or the societal side. And it's overseeing everything now. Saturn in this chart is not the final dispositor because you have Jupiter and Pisces in its domicile, and then you have the mutual reception between Mercury and the moon. So there's kind of a lot of energy spread out, but there will be times later in the year, actually, when Jupiter comes back into Pisces, that you have the final dispositor being Saturn, and especially at points later in the year. So we still have this overpowering Saturnine Aquarian energy overseeing everything, and that's probably part two of what the limitation of love can be. Maybe there's long distance relationships and people can't travel as freely. And so that's the limitation. So, okay, let's move. The next thing I'll look at here. So this was a fixed star that is closely conjoined Mars and Venus when they perfect their conjunction, Merak, which is right there in the belly of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. And then Tania Borealis is right in the, the right paw, the right back paw of Ursa Major. So two stars are very closely conjoined, the Venus-Mars conjunction, and they're kicking us into this constellation of the Greater Bear. This symbolism is then necessary to unfold in to this moment of their conjunction. And I think it's apt here. Ptolemy says it's like Mars, Ursa Major, that there's a prudent, suspicious, mistrustful, self-controlled, patient nature. I have here an uneasy spirit and anger, and so there's kind of an edge to this with the bear maybe in the wild. I think that Venus and Mars and Leo, there's a certain wild energy there, but that there's an uneasiness, and that's where Saturn, the Saturn opposition comes. What's blocking? Where is the boundary? Where am I pushing too far? And then you have Elspeth Eberton, 1928, she says, love of command and domination. So I'm thinking control issues may be a part of this moment. Maybe that's something that's blocking this great exchange between Venus and Mars, some sense of being too overpowering. You know, a bear is a big thing. I mean, if you go out in nature and you're like hanging out in the woods somewhere and you see a bear, it's freak out time. I mean, you can go to YouTube, type in bear and bear videos. You see one, you're like jumping up in the tree, hiding your food, locking the doors. I mean, bears are a serious energy. So, and they can overpower, you know, and so maybe there is something with a little too much fire. And I'm going to talk about this in a second, but Venus is really getting throttled by this time here in Leo. Way too much fire for Venus, I think. Mars is the planet of fire. Leo is the fire sign. And I think, and then you have this Saturn, this cold Saturn opposing everything. Maybe the message here is it's just too overbearing, too intense, the passions and the fire, that it's almost like, you know, stop. We need to just stop and chill. So, you know, that's one way to look at it. Maybe control issues emerge. Control meaning lack of control, or maybe there's just too much domination. And you know, Venus needs a soft touch, you know, moisturizing the skin. That's a very Venusian thing. The adornment, you know, the feeling good physically, and the skin and the hair and just all of it. And when that gets, there's too much passion, that all falls by the wayside. Venus doesn't have room to breathe here, I don't think at all. Whereas when Venus was in its own Egyptian term, I think it was way more accessible. That was earlier on when the Mars-Saturn opposition perfected. We had a much stronger Venus. We've lost that now. Okay, so let's move. That's the kind of pressurized warning of this Mars-Venus conjunction here, happening on Tuesday, 3:30 p.m. in Central Europe. The next transit I want to look at happens here on Sunday. Okay, so we've moved all the way to Sunday. This is actually no, I know I missed a slide. The next transit I want to look at is on Friday, 16th July. This is the malefic enclosure of the moon in Libra. And I just want to mention this. I talked a little bit earlier. The moon here is ruled by that Venus. So this moon gets to Libra. In some ways we like it. There's no hard aspect to Mars, to Saturn, no hard aspect to the lunar nodes. it's waxing, and it's sort of safe here in Libra. So there's a lot to like about it. But you look at the ruler, this moon is ruled by a Venus that is, like I was just, saying, is this throttling that Venus has to undergo here after it lost that dignity. I mean, it's really wrapped up in this Mars-Saturn opposition. Mars, the planet of power, force, and breakage. You know, Saturn, the planet of blocks, restrictions, and isolation. They're butting heads. I mean, this is like in a brick wall and just pounding that wall, trying to break a wall down. Have you ever destroyed a wall? I mean, I've been on some construction crews sometimes in my life, and you just break a wall with tools. I mean, you have to bang that thing. And sometimes a man can't do it, or a person can't do it. I mean, it requires big machines. So this is kind of what we're dealing with, is like desire and anger, the Mars wanting to break down structures that are so powerful, and this real butting of heads. And how can we have love and touch and pleasure and relaxation, Venus, when that's what's going on? So Venus really gets sort of trampled and lost here in this opposition. And that Venus has to rule this moon at a moment when the moon is separating from a trine to Saturn and Aquarius and applying to a sextile from Mars in Leo. Now those aspects aren't harsh aspects, but it's still carrying the light of Saturn into the light of Mars. And so it can be a rougher energy. And again, I always go to the lunar mansions, and a lot of these lunar mansions will have a section with the writers that write about them about what they're not good for. This particular lunar mansion, the 16th, Al-Zubana, is not good for love and relationships, not good for traveling, healing, or gardening. And so when I see a moon under heavy pressure, I always like to go to that mansion, and just that can sort of be predictive about some of the issues that may arise. And so I would be watchful here of maybe your relationship life. And you see, that's what Libra signifies anyways, relationships. It can signify relationships and love. While the moon is rough here, given that it's enclosed by the malefics and the ruler is so damaged, you might want to just, with this Libra transit, not try to make new moves with relationships. Just try to put off those tough conversations. Maybe just chill or relax or rest, or be aware that during this period, this is probably about really only a few hours here when it's the worst of it. And this will be Friday at 9:30. So Friday night, I'm not going to be out trying to go do relating with people here. I'll probably have a cool night or a night in, editing some videos maybe. But just be aware, that's a rough energy Friday with this moon, this lunar enclosure, and Venus ruling the moon being so kind of roughed up. Okay, so let me now go to the last transit. This comes up on Sunday. And actually I want to come back here. I want to say one other brief thing about this. So you have a three-way rulership tree in this chart. The moon is ruled by Venus, Venus by the sun, and the sun by the moon. That can be mitigating, where you have three planets that are kind of teaming up. It's kind of attenuated in a way that you're kind of going through one planet to get to the ruling planet. And so that maybe lessens the impact in a certain way. But I just want to speak here again about the sun in Cancer, maybe as a way to mitigate this difficult moment here on Friday. And what is that? That's consciousness in the home. So what I was just saying about staying home and editing videos, that's Mercury. I'm going to lean here on this co-presence with Mercury and the sun. Just kind of stay in, chill, bring my consciousness to some of the mercurial tasks I'm working on. I think that's a great way to maybe mitigate some of that difficulty. Okay, let's move. The last transit I wanted to look at is Mercury going under the beams of the sun late Sunday. So this happens 8:53 where I am. Mercury gets within 15 degrees of the sun, and then from then on out, Mercury will head under those beams, and until its conjunction there, the superior conjunction, and then we'll get a Mercury retrograde in Libra later in the year. But this moment here is just worth pointing out, because remember, this is such a good week for Mercury with Jupiter's trine right upon its entry into Cancer. It's leaving Gemini. It's domicile, yes, but it's leaving the North Node, which is in Gemini, and it's coming out of the retrogradation phase. So it's kind of it's been doing so much work there for a couple of months that it's now time to move on from Mercury. I think that's a sense of relief, even though it's leaving its domicile. But you get that mutual reception with the moon, with the Virgo moon we've already talked about. So there's a lot of cool Mercury stuff happening this week. And I think with it going under the sun's beams here late Sunday, you might want to take advantage of this week to do Mercury things, buy things, send the emails, send the writing, send the applications. You know, all of the Mercury stuff you can do. This is a time when it's still visible in the sky, so it still has some direct access maybe from that energetic visibility. And certainly astrologically, when it moves under those sun's beams, there's some blockage. Now it will enter its own Egyptian terms here later in the next week. So you'll have a chariot transit here to mitigate that, which is, by the way, why I love the Egyptian terms, because they mean we're never out of the constant shift of positive and negative. And by the way, I want to correct myself here briefly. So I've been doing this research for my paper on the terms, going back into some of my old textbooks and some of my the books I have, and you know, I love the idea of the word term. It has a connotation in modern English of a period where a president, like I was speaking about in my last video, has a term of rulership. When in fact, if you study the Greek that this is a translation of, term singular is actually a degree, 1 degree. And so when we say the terms, we actually mean the degrees where a planet rules in each sign. And so one translation that I've actually been thinking about is just the degrees. So when Venus is in their degrees or in its degrees. But that is a long way of saying it's a pluralization. So I'm going to try to keep with this using plural. Mercury will enter its terms, aka its degrees, here in Cancer next week. And my paper will be out, my essay, that's going to come hopefully in the next few months. I'm trying to prioritize that, launching more writing, a more written component to what I'm offering. It's just essential to have writing, in my view. And we get then Mercury with Sirius next week while it comes into its term. So I think Mercury, even though it goes under the beam Sunday, there's still a little bit of a chance next week, but basically we lose some power with Mercury. And so you might want to do some mercurial things this week while there's such a strong Mercury in the sky before it gets a little bit pressurized, a lot pressurized. It goes opposite then Saturn when it hits Leo. It comes to its own sign, Virgo. I do think there's times in the Virgo transit when Mercury will be out from the beams. Let's just jump back here, jumping back to solar fire. Great thing to do, right? Just check it. We can check it on the fly. So here we go. In this chart, Mercury, this is 2021 July. So this is where we are right now. We just push ahead. Let's see, Mercury will be in Virgo and out from under the sun's beams. Mars is in the mix at that point. So Mercury's having to contend with more of a martial flavor. I like Mars-Mercury combinations actually quite a lot. So I'm actually looking forward to that Mars and Virgo. But some people out there are a little bit more sensitive to Mars. They're less comfortable with it, and that can create some problems potentially. Still, you get a Mercury outside of the sun's beams. So Mercury, this is August. We have then, you know, the last half of July. We'll have to wait until later in August for Mercury to come out of the sun's beams while it is in Virgo. I think it's going to be about mid-August. So we'll have about a month of this Mercury being hindered. So take advantage of it this week is my main point here. Take advantage of your mercurial powers while it's here in Cancer, making a sign-based trine to Jupiter in Pisces. Okay, that is the weekly astrology. Thank you for being here. Let's pull a few tarot cards to get some context and provide a few more symbols to help us understand the week ahead. Let me pull the first card here. All right, we got the first card. I always try to just get calm. When I do that breathing and then that focus, it's just trying to tap into the spirit, that spiritual energy that overrides and oversees everything. Just infusing the draw there of the card with that spiritual intention. I find it works better that way, just to honor the divination, honor the cards, honor the card pull. So let me see here. This card is the Venus or Mars in Leo, the Vantage card, the 7 of Clubs or the 7 of Wands. Perfect, isn't it? For a transit with in where the conjunction does it. happens actually in the decan before that, the middle decan of Leo, but still Mars will be in this decan, I believe, by the end of the week. It enters this decan. This is a decan about battle. This is a card about battle. You know, vantage is a view. It's the view that we can kind of achieve or earn. We have a point or a viewpoint. When you're fighting, sometimes you kind of seek a high ground. You're looking to kind of battle and then get a view that can help you with your struggles, with your martial struggles. Some people push back a little bit against the fighting metaphor, but I just think about it as the struggles of life. So we can fight every day. We're fighting against ourselves, struggling against our own. You know, golf, they say, is you're just playing against yourself. Maybe fight is the wrong word. Maybe it's just struggle or trying to push ourselves to live and live well. And that's not to say we need to just, always be going at 120 miles per hour. But I think generally speaking, it's nice to think about, living well. What are we doing here in life? Mars can be very constructive energy in terms of making, producing and active and tools and building. And I have no problem with that as a way to look at how Mars is working in our lives. It's good to say, okay, what am I doing here? What am I making? What am I, all right, I'll use the word fight. What am I fighting for, such that I'm looking for, to gain perspective, to struggle to where there's a place where I can say, okay, this is now how I see things after the struggles that have been made and the victories that have been won. So that's what I would consider here, looking back. This is in this first position. How was the Mars and Leo transit for you so far, opposite Saturn? Where's the Leo part of your chart? What's changed there? What's new? How are you seeing things new with your Mars and with your Leo sector? What have you fought through or had to overcome? And maybe that's a good way to think about this week as Venus comes to sweeten Mars up briefly there with that conjunction, that we can add more to that story, continue the struggle, as it were, with that Leo sector. So that's what I'm gonna keep with that card. I like that delineation, and I like it especially for this week when Mars is right there in Leo entering this decan. So let me get the second card. All right, well, okay, the second card's easy. That's the Fool. We pulled up the Fool. That's a lovely, lovely card. I love seeing the Fool in the second position always. Look at it. The Fool is looking forward, looking ahead there. And that's the stripped away tabula rasa energy. When I see these in readings, I always think of letting go of everything we know, everything we think we know, even just for a moment, and just trying to have a fresh experience with reality and a fresh experience with the conditions around us. And then move into the future with as much of a cleaned out expectation set, so that we can basically see things anew. What the doors of perceptions are cleansed. Is that the Blake? I don't have the Blake poem memorized. Should I get it up? Would that be useful? Let me just see if I can get up the few lines there with the William Blake poem. I think that would be useful. William Blake, Doors of Perception. And let's see here if we get that couplet up. If we can. So here we go. Quote by William Blake. Good reads. Okay, here it is. This is the perfect poem for the Fool card, and we can just end it here. I'm satisfied with ending it here. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. For man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern. Okay, so the first part there is so powerful, right? If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. So that's what I think will extend into this week. Try to touch infinity, cleanse that perception, and go in and have this experience with infinity in this really sweet moment, summer 2021, getting ready for Jupiter to come back into Aquarius and really trying to fully enjoy life as much as we can with that uncertainty on the horizon. Okay, that's weekly astrology, that's weekly tarot. Thank you for being here. As always, you can go to my website, sjanderson144.com, schedule readings with me, astrology readings, tarot readings. I have a Patreon now. You can join if you're so inclined. Thank you very much for your support. I always love that support. It helps me keep just doing what I'm doing. And have a lovely, lovely, lovely week ahead. I'll talk to you very soon.